ready to go. All right, so this is part 2 of exercise 6, where we definitely dive a little bit more into the post-production, is normally what this is referred to as in architecture. Now, the reason it's post-production is usually because now the architecture is set, the design is set, the model, everything is kind of not going through changes or iterations. That way we don't have to do this post-production a million times. Usually post-production is maybe done once or twice, maybe tweaked here or there, and is definitely part of more the final image of, my lack of air quotations for today, but I am sort of air quoting when I say final image, because we know in architecture that, architecture is never really finished, right? It's like art. You kind of just find a stopping point. However, I'm definitely a true believer in that every drawing should be beautiful. Also air quotes on that one, just because of its subjectivity. However, a lot of styles can come into play, and that's where I think the brilliance of these tools and these digital platforms are really interesting. They definitely offer a wide range of tools so that a style can be achieved. However, particularly with style, I would say stick to your roots, right? There's nothing wrong with an analog drawing. There's nothing wrong with 50% color, rather than just being absolutely saturated every time we produce something digitally. However, last time we talked a little bit how we'd poche. We got the sky in there. So obviously I want to continue by making it not look like a weird falls off the face of the earth. I also want to talk about how we can either scale it or move things around and some other tools. I want to talk about shade and shadow. I mentioned it last time, but I didn't actually show you how obviously we can use the calculations in Rhino. We don't have to just fake it till we make it anymore. However, we could. But that was definitely more about my Graphics 3 rotation. So I definitely want to show you how to get it right from Rhino itself. So we'll start with that. I mentioned where we get some trees and scale figures with Pimp My Drawings, but again, I definitely wanted to show you how to do that and achieve it, how you can draw them and use them in Rhino just as much as Photoshop. And then lastly, obviously in the process, I'll be going over that transfer process. So obviously going from Illustrator, last time we went from Rhino, Illustrator, Photoshop, so a little bit today is really probably more between Photoshop and Rhino. So let's get started. So first things first, we have the shade and shadow, and last time, I mentioned you never have to calculate shade and shadow again. So we produced some of this stuff, but we need an overlay of shade and shadow. Now, two things can happen. Again, I could just sort of fake it till I make it here and draw a shadow. I could make a shadow layer, call it shadow, right, and just get drawing away. However, that's going to be quite time consuming, and if I already have a digital model, it doesn't make any sense, right? Because, the digital model already has that information. Now, I'll need to find the view that I want to achieve. So in my case, I do have a section view, and normally we don't show shade and shadow in a section, but who cares, right? For the sake of this project, I do want you to explore all the different styles that you can achieve, so I don't mind if there's shade and shadow in a section. In fact, I'm not the only one who disagrees with that. Some professors say, no, you can have shade and shadow in a section because, they know it's not real anyway, but I beg to differ. Anyway, so let's go ahead and get those shade and shadow qualities. However, the first thing that we'll need is that section cut again, right, of the model and what we were basically trying to get last time. So let's go ahead and make another clipping plane. And we'll get rid of the other one. We'll go ahead and flip that one around again. And so in my case, it probably would have been a good idea not to get rid of that, or at least make sure I got the shade and shadow information before I got rid of the clipping plane. But let's say that was the right view, and it's not. Definitely needs to be flipped. Let's flip it. Sweet. More or less, I think Last time I showed a little bit of the stair that was coming out. There we go. A little bit more realistic to the section that I got. Next, this is definitely where my computer starts to crash, especially when I have a lot of stuff open. So I'm going to get rid of Miro and get rid of Finder. Make sure my fans are on maximum. They are. And get some space underneath my computer to relieve the heat that disperses from it. Alright, so let's go ahead and put it in rendered view. I think it's a great preview. However, in some cases it can slow your computer down, as it's doing to mine. If that be the case, you can change the preferences. But we want the shade and shadow quality to it, but we don't want to have to do all the work. So I definitely want those interesting dark shadows that I noticed at the bottom, sort of with the highlights on the topography. However, keep in mind it is an elevation view, right? So they're not exactly going to look the same way as they always do. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in wireframe and actually go to the view that I need. So in this case, it's going to be this one. Right, which is actually where we made the Make 2D. So I can take that view and of course confirm that it's the correct one. I'm going to go ahead and put this view in rendered, and you'll start to see that I get this sort of gradient view, right? It even starts to arguably have a slight texture to it. Honestly, it looks really good in the projector for some reason. And for the first time, doesn't look so great in my view. Anyway. However, there's the shade and shadow. Of course, I can manipulate it still, and arguably I can really just take a screenshot of this, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and hide some of these components that I know I don't need. For instance, some of these things. And again, just get this shade and shadow quality of this. You'll notice that I have a gray background, and you know, it's really close to the gray colors of what's going on there. So I might actually want to change the background color, at least in this scenario. So I'm going to go to settings. I'm actually going to change my background color. So obviously my settings are going to look a little different than your settings. Not only is it on Rhino 8 for the Macintosh, but yeah, it's just going to be completely different for Windows. So, and honestly, this wasn't even the settings I was looking for. This is great to find. I'm looking for preferences. So we got settings, and we got settings, but we'll see if they're the same settings. Sometimes they are, sometimes they're not. I don't know. It looks like Rhino 8 kind of put them all together. So I don't know. It might be something I need to find out later, or just change it actually in my rendered toggle view. So for instance, changing the background here will also change the background in this preview. So that's pretty nice. So for instance, instead of this 360 environment, I would change it to a solid color such as black, right? That would be a lot easier to work with. Still, arguably black is also in there. Can you think of any other color that, say, Hollywood uses to remove the background, guys? A green screen, right? Or even a blue screen. So there's a reason they choose those colors, and it's because it's a lot easier to see them in Photoshop. And yes, they use Photoshop on every single one of those frames, you know, in order to remove things or do things like that. But yeah, a green screen can be really effective. And again, the reason I'm going to use that today is, well, it's easy to remove in Photoshop. So again, I'm going to go ahead and switch it to green instead. And now I want to manipulate the sun a little bit, just because, well, you know, you know, you might get it, you know, exactly the first time, but if you notice your shadows are all dark, or, you know, you're not seeing enough light on the object, period, right? And as you can see, the direction of the light's going to make a big difference. In my case, north is going to make it look just absolutely white. So as I'm basically just moving the sun around, I'm looking for the best spot that shows the most contrast. I mean, don't get me wrong, this looks like an Etsy picture right now. You could put that on a t-shirt and sell it for $25 a piece. Right, there you go. There's a $2,000 you needed, right? But yeah, we're definitely looking for the most contrast between those white elements. I'm just going around. Now I know on the projector it kind of just looks white, but that's looking pretty good right there. There's actually a little highlight there, a little darkness. In fact, I can mess with the intensity as well to also really change. Now again, I know you can't see that on the projector, but yeah, I'm gonna go a little dramatic today. I mean, why not? It's for the sake of tutorial. And that's looking pretty good. And for also the sake of tutorial, I'm not gonna sit here and render this. I'm just gonna take a screenshot. But again, obviously, you could do the real deal and just render it out. But yeah, doesn't matter if we got the little green in there, that's okay. That's looking pretty good. I probably should have got rid of this red line. Let's actually go ahead and hide that